I used to think, listeners, that success looked like this bigger round, higher valuation, another zero on the revenue line. I have seen many people chase it for years. And also kind of have had the opportunity to hear from them, like waking up at 4 a.m. suddenly, heart racing, inbox at maybe 4,000 unread, and realizing that they have built this machine that was slowly eating them alive. And that's when they had this question, like a different question, not how do I build the next unicorn, but how do I build something that doesn't ask me to trade my life for it? Listeners, on this conversation on the BizBlend podcast, this is for everyone who has felt that same quiet panic. I'm your host, and as always, and we are calling this episode as Redefining Success, building companies that give more than they take. My guest, Alisha Esmail, someone who has actually closed the loop between profit, impact, and staying human. Well, she built and exited one of Canada's most recognized ethical coffee companies, wrote coffee, and then turned around and started teaching founders how to use AI and systems to buy back their time and energy instead of selling it off pieces by pieces. So, with that, Alicia, welcome to BizBlend, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and I'm excited to get into what you just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alisha, most founders, like I've worked with or I know, say that they want to make a dent or they want to make some kind of impact or build with purpose. But when the cash runway gets short, impact is usually the first thing that absolutely gets cut. You actually paid farmers above cost of production while running a retail coffee chain in one of the most competitive markets in the world. I mean, that is absolutely, it's inspiring, but yet it's really difficult as well. How did you make that math work without lying to yourself or your investors?
It definitely took some gymnastics, especially in the early years. Like you mentioned, coffee is one of the most saturated markets in the world. And when I got started, it was really difficult to do things differently. The systems and the supply chain isn't set up to support the farmers, it's really to set up a lot of the people in the middle.
Yep.
If someone goes and grabs a coffee at a cafe, often, nowadays it's costing 7, $9, but a coffee farmer is often only seeing maybe 20, 25 cents of that.
Hmm.
And so it took a lot of innovation around supply chain, around working directly with farmers to problem solve how we were going to do things differently and taking risks of importing ourselves, both on our end, but also for our farmers, taking a risk on us, especially in the early days. And then sticking to our values throughout the wild challenges from COVID and even into recently with tariffs.
Yep. I think that's something um, maybe predicted or not. No one predicted, but um, I mean, in this particular scenario, when as a founder, you know that this is something. It is too challenging to execute. It may look good on paper, but it's kind of almost impossible to execute because in a way you are questioning, you are challenging the system, the status quo. Um, you know, when something didn't work for you while during the execution and everything, did you have any kind of second thoughts like maybe this is not something that I would like to do?
Absolutely. Just like most founders, and I'm sure your listeners have experienced, there were lots of moments where I second guessed myself. I was, told myself there were easier ways to make money, easier industries to be in. But I was really driven to try and create an impactful change in the lives of these farmers. And I remember talking to an old mentor of mine years ago, and I was just like, doing the right thing sucks. People don't honor that, and sometimes you just get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And I remember him looking at me and just saying, Alicia, doing the right thing is always the right thing. And that just kind of stuck with me, like a lot has changed since I first started my first business and in the business landscape in general. And I think, like, when it comes to character and values, those are things that will always stand true, no matter what AI transformation is starting to happen, uh, our values and our compass needs to be there.
That is so well said. Absolutely. Um, and and you now teach founders, since mention about AI. So you now teach founders to buy back their time, of course, with AI and automation. But the moment you hand off big chunks of your company to tools or cheaper labor, you often lose the exact soul that made the company feel human in the first place. Especially when it comes to impact driven, ethical or responsible driven brands. How do you automate without becoming this soulless machine that you originally you kind of have it in your vision?
I'm glad you asked that because I agree. It's really important to keep the soul,
Mm.
but how do you get ahead without leveraging technology and especially knowing your competitors are going to integrate AI? And so, what I've done and what my team has done is gone down this journey. When we first started to incorporate AI into Road Coffee, the coffee company, we started testing and iterating. And at the beginning, we definitely made the mistakes of, coming across like we're AI and doing some of the basic mistakes a lot of people do, even with ChatGPT when it first launched. But then we learned we really need to look at two things. We needed to look at our calendars
Mm.
and see where we're spending the most time. And then second, look at our energy and where are we losing the most energy. And from there, we were able to map out where we can leverage AI, and it always came down to relationships. So, myself and my team, none of us wanted to give up the relationships in business. It
Yeah.
was the, sorting emails for my EA or creating drafts or deep research. It was a lot of the mundane tasks that we could start with and then automating and integrating AI to leverage your genius. So, any founder that's listening or anyone that has an idea, one of the best things you can do right now is look at your calendar, look at where you're wasting time and energy, and ask yourself if I could change one thing right now that would make me happier doing what I'm doing, what would I change? And that's usually a good place to start.
Absolutely. And trust me, I mean, it frees up. It kind of eases that burden so much from founders' shoulders, because that time, which is kind of, you get back that time, you can actually work on something creative, something strategic, or maybe, um, maybe connecting with your teams and thinking out, how we can solve this problem, what is our challenge, how we can work more creatively here. I mean, you get a lot of flexibility as well.
Absolutely, and what I really believe is our genius isn't in the mundane tasks or the repetitive tasks. Our
Mm.
genius is in the strategy, in the creative, in that relationship piece, and that part we still want. I want my team to work in their genius, and just like you're what makes this podcast special. You're not replaceable. But I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes smaller tasks that could use AI.
Absolutely. And that's why I could relate so well into it because a huge challenge that, as a podcaster we face is like all this scheduling and emails and, you know, but in some way or the other, like, at least with this conscious identification of which tools can actually help us, maybe in an optimized way, because let's be real that, when especially we are in that beginning phase and there is a huge purpose, there's a huge challenge that we are trying to solve at a bigger level. It's also very important to be monetarily, resource wise, also conscious that, whether we are just simply jumping blindly onto every AI tool which is out there in the market, or we are trying to identify where exactly which particular tool can actually solve all the problems.
That's so important. Is there a tool that you're currently working with that you enjoy?
Absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of our scheduling and email automation stuff. This email automation specifically has been like a huge relief for us because connecting with the guests, like you must have seen, Alicia, like their reminder emails that actually helped us make sure that, the guests are also aware that today you have this podcast at so and so time. Here is the link. Everything is like organized. We don't have to be humanly present there, to share everything. There is an automation happening behind the scene and working everything.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, especially because you're working on an international stage. And so you're working with people that are awake at different hours, and being able to still have timely communication with those people is such a pro move.
Exactly, exactly. And also, let's talk about, and this is something I am really loving the name, your five tanks framework: emotional, mental, physical, there's relational as well, and then spiritual. um, it sounds great, but then, building something like as impact driven as road coffee, and then, I mean, honestly, there is no work life balance. I mean, there can be a harmony created, but when you are doing something which is very personal to you, you are building something, I think we do not hesitate to put dedicate hours into it. um, which tank did you let run empty first? And I mean, what did it actually cost to you?
I would say the first tank that probably led to my multiple burnouts was
Mm,
probably my emotional tank.
okay.
Um, Which I wouldn't have guessed at the time. I probably would have said maybe the physical or mental because, you're working so many hours, you're skipping meals, you're skipping
Mm,
any type of workout. But I but what I realized in hindsight, it was often the emotional energy that went first. And I think that's why so many people hit burnout and then they start resenting the company they built.
mm,
Which is sad, right? Because you pour so much energy and passion and time into something, and then you start resenting it if you're not in a good place emotionally.
exactly, exactly. And that's why you need not only systems and tools, you also need people, who can actually help you with, whom you can work with, you can collab or delegate with, so that uh, you don't have to be always, because if you keep on doing all the tasks and everything yourself, then, yeah, popularly as people say, you are not running the company is running you.
Yeah, that's so true. I like that you said that about relationships. It's
Mhm.
really at the end of the day, building companies is awesome, but if you're like, what is success without people to share it with?
Yeah.
It really is about the people and the connection, whether it's an impact driven company or not. I think
Mhm.
you'd be really lonely if you didn't have relationships at the center.
Absolutely. And the most exciting part of bringing people, maybe of different generations, different backgrounds, is that you get to enjoy that, diversity of ideas and perspectives of looking at a single aspect or maybe challenge in your work. I mean, I absolutely love it, when people have actually, um, these young minds have so good ideas on how to look at things differently. And I think that is something which, AI may not be able to replicate, not sure, but from the point where I am, I don't think it is so advanced that it's going to replicate that.
I think you might be right about that. I think AI is going to be able to do a lot, but the creativity and the core of that, I don't think that's going to be replaceable because I think that's part of what makes us human. The ability to dream and create and think of create something out of nothing, right? Like right now AI is at a place where it has the access of all the knowledge in all the world, but it can't create new knowledge. At least not yet.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people, who are listening, it's kind of a pushback, but they could be thinking that, that's okay, that's fine, it's beautiful, but I have my payroll next week. My impact idea is still a deck, not revenue. There's nothing concrete in front of me. I don't know what can I do here. Um, isn't the honest truth that you have to take a lot from your health, your relationships, sometimes even from ethics, in order to ever get to the place where you can give? Or is that just the story we tell ourselves to justify burning everything down on the way up?
I think it's both. I think it's not either or, but it's a combination of both. I think we always have something we can give. Whether it's a glass of water. This is something I learned from working with a lot of coffee farmers and doing development work, and that's my background. I would be in the most remote villages, and I would meet the kindest people that would cook us a meal. And that meal, I know for them that they might not be eating for the rest of the week, but they would cook 2 chickens and a full meal for us just because they wanted to honor and show kindness, and they didn't have much to give, but they were able to give something, and that always stuck with me and taught me that we always have something that we can give to benefit someone else's life, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Like I mentioned, it could be a glass of water. And then at the same time, from a business perspective, there's a lot of competing things for your time. Like you mentioned, you got to build revenue, you got to take care of your current customers, you got to meet payroll. There's a lot of competing factors. I think that's why it, the best thing people can do is if they want to make an impact, and not everyone does, and that's okay. It looks different for everyone. But if you want to make an impact, what is the easiest way to do that? And then just take one step. It doesn't have to be the whole vision all at once.
Mhm.
That's something I had to learn the hard way. I remember being like, well, I don't know how to do this because I can't solve the coffee crisis by myself. And I had to learn just take one step at a time, and then, paying farmers above cost of production eventually led to fully female supply chains, which then eventually led to, offering microloans. So it didn't all happen at once for me either. It was just putting one foot in front of the other and figuring out a way to do it. I will share though, I definitely did make the mistake in the early years of being too impact driven and not enough on building the company.
Mhm.
So it is important to bring on new customers. It's very important to drive revenue, and profit solves problems. You can solve more problems and help more people the more profitable you are. And that one I had a bit backwards probably for the first few years of business.
Hmm. I really love that honesty, Alusha, because this is such a, kind of a tightrope, that especially when it comes to, um, impact driven businesses or brands that, should you stick with just the impact, or you should stick with the number or the profit part, because then you kind of contemplate that people are going to question your morality or your intention, that you just are here for business, not for the impact. So yeah.
That's true, and I remember having that fear, and I really had to work through it and start to realize that, um, what was my own relationship with money, and why was I afraid of making money? And almost that word profit used to be like a dirty word, and I really had to do some inner work on my own relationship with money and learn that it's okay to make money.
Yeah,
Like, maybe someone, listening today needs to hear that. It's okay to make money. It's okay to be profitable.
exactly. I mean, it is like, if I'm a caregiver, I cannot take care of others if I'm not there at all. I mean, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. It's just as simple as that. But then it is very easy to say, but it definitely needs a lot of inner work. And I think this exactly translates, if we are trying to, you know, um, bring a disruption and bring an impact, from a company or from an entrepreneurship POV.
Absolutely agree. It's, I find the journey of entrepreneurship is more of an internal journey, development that plays out in business form.
Mm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I really loved, the example as well. That is such a beautiful and very, very heartfelt example. The farmers feeding you. I mean, this is something that I also see this, culture in India that, um, and I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but people who may not have the resources or the capability to feed themselves, but for them they are always, always ready to make sure that, you feel welcomed, because it's kind of embedded in their culture that, uh, if there's a guest, or if someone is actually genuinely helping them, or trying to do some goodwill for their upliftment, they're always there to maybe, sometimes feed you or give you some gift in their own capacity. And I think that is priceless. That is a timeless human experience or gift that you can cherish.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think especially, I think we forget about that sometimes in business. And even I've had my moments where I come back and I'm back from a farm level and I'm back in the day to day and I forget about those special moments that have, dramatically changed my life. And so I think it's a good reminder. And even going back to what you said earlier about relationships, this is why we need to be in community and
Yeah,
have people around us that can remind us of the things that really do matter at the end of the day.
totally, totally. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. And before we wrap up, Alicia, if listeners, they would like to connect with you further, they would like to share their thoughts with you about this conversation, and they would also like to understand and explore your work as well. What would be the best way to connect?
The best way to connect with me is Alisha Esmail at gmail.com or just DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I love chatting in the DMs and would love to hear from your listeners what they're working on, if they have any AI questions or business questions in general.
Beautiful. Listeners, what I'm going to do is, as always, have all these links and details in the show notes so that you can easily connect with Alicia. And feel free to share your thoughts. Feel free to also leave your thoughts in the comments section along with this episode. And just refer to the show notes. And I'm still thinking, because the truth is that most of us didn't start companies to become better at suffering. We started them because we saw something broken and we thought, I can actually fix that. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that we are part of what's broken too. So here's the only question that matters after today. What are you willing to stop doing so your company can start giving more than it takes, starting with giving your life back? So, Alisha, thank you so much for such a beautiful reflection with your journey, with your experiences. This was really, really heartfelt.
Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to see who you have on in your next episode. You're doing some great work. Keep sharing with the people and inspiring them.
Thank you so much, Alisha. Thank you so much for your blessings. And to all the listeners out there, if this episode stirred something within you, maybe send it to your founder friend who needs to hear it too. And until then, this is BizBlend. I'm your host, Sana. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.